one of the biggest problems, and it's pervasive, is the US government lies about everything and lies relentlessly. It's not the only one. British government does the same and other governments do the same, but the lying is non-stop. So we don't really even know, except by trying to parse the, whatever evidence or crumbs or leaks or whistleblowers tell us what's really going on, what is going on. But what we do know now is how America's top diplomats for 30 years warned against the American policy approach. And one of the most important warnings that everyone can find online is a memo by our current CIA director, William Burns, who in 2008 was the US ambassador to Russia. And he wrote a memo called Njet means Njet. And it was, that is a red line to extend NATO to Ukraine. And he said, it's not just Putin, it's the entire political class. It doesn't matter, pro-Putin, anti-Putin, all Russian leaders say Njet means Njet. Now, the reason I mentioned secrecy in this context, we never even know about this except for WikiLeaks. Because the American people, who should tell the American people what our top diplomat in Russia thinks about the most crucial issue that could get us all killed? The American people, they're completely incidental to this story. No one tells them anything, and no one admits anything. And so there's been so much lying about the failure of negotiations. Why did the negotiations break down in March 2022? Because the US stopped Ukraine from agreeing with Russia on neutrality. How do we know that? Because I know it because people have told me that were involved in the negotiations, but I also know it because Naftali Bennett, who was an informal mediator, happened to blurt it out in an interview, which is quite fascinating to look at, because it's a little weird how just open he talks. He says, yeah, we were reaching an agreement. We were in the 7th draft. They were about to sign. Then the United States came in and stopped it. And by the way, you know why he says they stopped it? Because, well, I disagreed, Bennett says, but, they wanted to look tough to China. Are you kidding? This is a war not even about Ukraine. It's about China, and not even about China, but about looking tough to China. And by the way, Stoltenberg, who really is someone I've known for a long time, and he is I can't even say it publicly anymore, what I think about him, even though I used to be friends with him when he was Prime Minister of Norway. Disgusting. But today he says, we can't look soft because China will see us looking soft. This is the way to get us all killed, by the way. But I want to come back to the secrecy point. We wouldn't know what these diplomats said, except that they get leaked or they get released, or once in a while, one of them reflects after the fact in their memoirs how dangerous the time was. William Perry tells us afterwards, I thought about resigning because of NATO enlargement. I was so much against it. It was so dangerous. But then I thought maybe I shouldn't resign and so forth. He's a wonderful man. He should have resigned. The public should have understood this much earlier. But these things are not told. And we never got an accounting of why the negotiations broke down in March 2022. So the mainstream media just go completely silent. They don't even ask a question. And it's this secrecy which allows a small group, Biden, Newland, Blinken, Sullivan, I'm sure, obviously Raytheon and others are happy in the military-industrial complex, and the Armed Services Committee, they're happy. But it's a tiny group that is calling these policies. And these are crazy policies, and they're absolutely dangerous. And I think the Cuban Missile Crisis, to come back to that, taught us, most of the opinion of these elites, which was always pointing to war solutions, would have gotten us all killed. And that's why it's so crazy that we're in the situation we're in right now. One mild saving grace is that all the European pro-war leaders are unpopular and becoming more and more unpopular, and Biden is very unpopular. So none of this is winning any political support. And if they actually took the issue to the people in our countries, the public would be dead set against what we're doing right now, because we're gambling with Armageddon, to quote a title of a wonderful book about the Cuban Missile Crisis, for no reason, because we could have reached peace in December 2021 when Putin put absolutely valid, real propositions on the table that should have been negotiated. The U.S. rejected that. We could have reached peace in March 2022 when they came close to signing an agreement that the United States stopped, and we could reach peace now, even now. But they don't want to negotiate.
Because this is the problem. They don't want to negotiate, and then by not making negotiations possible now, it seems to me that they're making negotiations more difficult in the future.
Of course, everything gets harder. Everything gets harder. And, you know, in 2021, in December 17, when President Putin put the U.S.-Russia security agreement on the table, there was no talk, by the way, about territory at that time or about annexation of Lugansk and Donetsk and so forth. This was about the Minsk II agreement, an agreement that was reached, not only signed by Ukraine, but actually endorsed 15-0 by the UN Security Council. And more than that, guaranteed, quote unquote, by France and Germany. Russia wasn't making demands to annex territory. Everything becomes harder when you have war. This is clear. That's why these guys, it's so mindless. And by the way, you know, I think I mentioned to you, I called the White House after Putin put those propositions on the table. I was able to have my say for an hour, but I was told point blank, we will not negotiate over NATO. And I told them, you're going to have war. This is absolutely reckless. So there we are.